Part 13. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 128. If someone dropped a firecracker at your house, the noise would be enough for you to say hello to that person 18 times. If he drops a 2-kick, regardless of whether he is your cousin, you may also excitedly greet his family's 18th generation ancestors. So what if he dropped a C4? Haha, just kidding. Compared to the size of the nest, which covers the entire city, big fat self-destruction is only equivalent to a cannon that is slightly more powerful than the 2-kick. But the highly closed environment, coupled with the gasoline barrel Su Tong left in the fat belly, naturally caused a different explosion. Just that violent shock wave, as the nests and tunnels crashed through them like an overwhelming sea, no one knew how many evolvers would suffer from it. Even the dome of the lair was exploded and collapsed, leaving a huge hole. It was unknown how many corpses of infected people were needed to seal the hole again. I am afraid that even Su Tong himself did not expect this. Fortunately, he ran fast enough, had a strong physical bonus, and the active skill leopard attack of Cheetah Cloak. Even with 2 people on his shoulders, he's still able to walk as fast as flying. But even so, Su Tong did not expect that the effect of Big Fat's explosion was so astonishing, and the 3 people were still sent flying far away by the shock wave. Like a kite with its string broken, it flew up with the shock wave for a while before falling to the ground, all of them badly. When Su Tong got up from the ground, he saw that the air was hazy, sunlight was shining in from the outside, and the air was filled with a lot of dust. He was obviously the red-faced Guan Gong, but at this moment he suddenly turned into the white-faced Cao. As long as you open your mouth, you will feel as if you have taken a mouthful of sand, which is so sour that you will almost suffocate. Big Fat's explosion effect completely exceeded his expectations, but it was also within his expectations. After all, if you throw a firecracker in an open field and cover it with a bucket, the power produced by the two is obviously completely different. Ahem, is this your method? Yan Niang opened her eyes on the ground, not sure whether she was questioning the explosion, Su Tong selling her to the ground, or both. But Su Tong didn't care and reached out to pull Yan Niang up and said, "Otherwise, you two can't beat him. Do you expect me to challenge him in a duel? You must think too highly of me," he said with an exaggerated look on his face. The corner of Yan Niang's mouth twitched a few times. Although it was undeniable that this was the best result at the moment, the feeling of being manipulated by this guy was not pleasant. But Yan Niang is not stupid either. She understands that this is Su Tong's deliberate revenge on herself for concealing and using him before. He simply designed such a trap to take revenge on himself and let himself feel what it feels like to be used as a pawn. There is a proverb that impressed her deeply: it takes 3 years for a gentleman to take revenge, but it takes 3 years for a villain to take revenge. Just when she wanted to ask Su Tong where the child was, suddenly, a strong wind came and swept away the dust in front of me. "You are here." The cold questioning voice immediately made Yan Niang and Xiao Zi's hearts drop to the bottom. Of course they knew that although the power of such an explosion looked amazing, it would never be able to kill number 8. Don't forget that he was a strong man who was good at flames. When the two looked back, they saw that one of No 8's hands had been blown off. A huge gash was ripped open on his forehead, and of course the wound on his chest that was torn open by Yan Niang became much worse after the impact of the explosion. But even so, his eyes were still as sharp as an eagle, but now they were even more bitter and gloomy. After his eyes quickly jumped over the 2 people, he quickly searched for the 3rd person, as if Yan Niang and Xiaohu were no longer important. "Hey, this way." At this time, Su Tong's voice came. Number 8 quickly followed the sound and saw Su Tong sitting carelessly on a stone. He was holding a towel in his hand to wipe away the thick dust and paint on his face. "Wipe it off." No 8's eyes were finally able to examine the boy's real face, and he said with some surprise, "Human." He was surprised. He didn't expect that the person who caused him a big loss and played tricks on the 3 source virus hosts was actually a human being. But he quickly suppressed this look of surprise. Regardless of whether the other party was a human or an evolved person, even if it had the same source virus as himself, he would never allow him to survive. Su Tong wiped the dust off his face, hung the towel aside, and then calmly took out a cigar from the prop book and put it in his hand. He lowered his head and stared at the cigar in his hand, using a lighter to slowly toast the front end of the cigar with a focused expression, as if he didn't care at all that No 8's eyes were almost tearing him apart. That child is already dead. Even if he wasn't killed by the explosion, he wouldn't be able to survive such a strong shock wave. We have already forced him to this point. Do you still want to naively wait and watch? Su Tong murmured to himself, as if talking to the air. Hearing this, number 8 couldn't help but narrowed his eyes and sneered, I can't save you by pretending to be a ghost at this time. Su Tong didn't speak anymore. He just put the toasted cigar to his mouth and took a deep breath. As the smoke clouds floated around him, he raised his head lazily and silently gave a thumbs up to number 8. Then the wrist slowly rotated so that the thumb gradually pointed downwards, and the contempt was self-evident. Court death. Being teased and despised by such a human being, No 8's self-esteem felt like it was being pressed to the ground and rubbed again and again. He jumped up with his legs and killed Su Tong in a domineering manner. But Su Tong did not move, and did not even make a defensive posture. He just took a deep puff of the cigar in his hand, as if savoring the unique taste of the cigar. This behavior is undoubtedly a kind of silent contempt, which makes number 8 angry. However, at the moment he fell in the air, a black shadow jumped over Su Tong's side. The speed was so fast that it was difficult to see with the naked eye, but the strong wind that followed suddenly surrounded him. The cloud smoke was sucked into a straight line and dispersed in the air. Wang Jiaming, No 8's face changed slightly, but he was still in mid-air and had no time to use his strength to change his moves. And soon number 8 realized that it was not just Wang Jiaming who took action at this moment, but 3 other figures were also attacking number 8 at this moment. They had been hiding in the dark and observing silently. Ever since number 8 chased Yan Niang, how could they not hear such a loud noise? If it was just about who would succeed the Mother Queen, they wouldn't be so worried. After all, the position of Mother Queen comes with sacrifices. Even the second-generation Queen Mother declined at an alarmingly fast rate, and would enter a period of decline in less than a few years. However, Tana's death and the child being stolen were the culprits that took this matter to extremes. It's strange that they don't care when it comes to life and death. And all this, from the time number 8 killed Chen Hai, he had fallen into his own trap. What I have to do is very simple. Keep weakening number 8, kill the blood demon, divide Liang Hong, cut off the help these 2 powerful players bring to number 8, and at the same time use No 8's concern for the child as bait to further to threaten him with serious injury. It's despicable, but it's really fun. As for his special mission, haha, go to hell, it's not the main plot. It doesn't matter if he can complete it the best. It doesn't matter if he can't complete it. He turned the entire layer upside down, just for the sake of a word, just for fun. Until now, number 8 had been seriously injured, so he used his body as a bait to expose No 8's flaws. If at this point, cowards like Wang Jiaming still refuse to give it a try, they can only say, bye, I can't afford it, I won't play anymore. Fortunately, when Su Tong was ready to run away, Wang Jiaming and the others still couldn't hold back this huge opportunity and rushed towards number 8. The 4 people joined forces to attack. Normally, number 8 would never take it seriously. But at this moment, with one of his arms broken, he had to make quick adjustments in the lightning and flint, and bravely accepted Wang Jiaming's frontal attack. And also try their best to dodge the fatal backstabs from the other 3 who joined forces to attack from behind. Let's go. Seeing that the four of them were already fighting together, Su Tong hurriedly walked to Yan Niang, picked her up and prepared to run away. Wait. Help me. Seeing that the two of them were about to leave, Mustache hurriedly stretched out his hand to Su Tong and shouted. Save you. He turned around and asked, pretending to be stupid, I'm not familiar with you, why should I save you? When Mustache heard this, he quickly looked at Yan Niang aside. Because of her, his hair had been pulled up into the shape of the Mediterranean Sea. It would be too unreasonable to leave him here at this time. Don't look at me, I am also a clay Buddha crossing the river and cannot save myself. Yan Niang shook her head quickly. At this time, she had to rely on Su Tong, so how could she help him speak? Seeing Yan Niang's refusal, Mustache couldn't help but cursed in his heart, bitch, but he still tried his best to put on a smile on his face. Little brother, please help me, I will give you whatever you want. He didn't want to stay here. After fighting head-on with number 8, Mustache knew clearly that the direction of No 8's evolution was entirely for fighting. Even though number 8 was seriously injured, it was unlikely that the four of them, Wang Tianming, could kill number 8. He didn't want to stay here to wait for death, but his injuries were too severe. Number 8 still used the power of Black Flame for his last punch, but it was through Njin's technique that it directly penetrated his internal organs. So much so that now his abdomen was burning like a furnace, and if he moved even slightly, he would feel as painful as if his internal organs were completely ignited and burned. Therefore, we can only look to Su Tong, a human being, for help. Although as a host of the source virus, he begged for mercy from human beings. It was simply a joke to spread the news. But the fact is that in the face of life and death, all false names are false. Su Tong hesitated for a moment, as if thinking about something, and stretched out his palm towards the Mustache. How about giving me a copy of your source virus, and I will help you. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 129. In fact, this sentence could be more tactful. For example, I can help you, but you have to pay more. Or, my waist has not been very good lately, I'm afraid I won't be able to carry you too. In short, there were a lot of rhetoric, but Su Tong chose the most direct method precisely because time was tight and everyone had to put down their dignity and do business first. You want to be my vassal? Mustache was stunned at first, but after seeing Yan Niang on Su Tong's shoulder, he finally came to his senses and snorted coldly, you actually want to reach the sky in one step and become the source of the virus? No, maybe I think I can properly compete for the position of Queen Mother, right? He said half-jokingly. But he has no interest in the position of Queen Mother, so if there are no accidents, he will find an opportunity to leave after this matter subsides. He came here purely out of revenge for the script and curiosity about these infected people. He opened the door and stuck his head in to take a closer look at what was fishy here. Now that I have finished reading everything I should see, of course I will not stay in this smelly and dirty place anymore. He. Mustache curled his lips. No matter how angry he felt, he could only endure it in his heart at this moment. After all, he still needed the other party to save him. In the end, he could only take the bottle handed over by Su Tong, cut his wrist, and throw the blood carrying the source virus to him. However, after handing the source virus to Su Tong, Mustache still did not forget to taunt him, you are a smart man, as you humans say, a good bird chooses the right tree to perch and rises to the sky in one step. You are lucky, but you are also limited to this, after all, you are still an outsider after all. The implication is to remind Su Tong not to have any unreasonable thoughts about the position of the Queen Mother. It is impossible for the Queen Mother to pass her position to a second-generation source virus. Su Tong didn't care about this. After getting the blood, he threw it into the prop book and confirmed that it was the other half of the virus, then he picked up his mustache and ran out. Nowadays, If you want to say where is the safest place, it is of course the safest place in front of the gate where the Queen Mother is. Because many people may not have noticed that it will soon get dark outside. As long as the sun sets, the Queen Mother will open the door and prepare to choose a successor. Since I have been there myself, I am familiar with the route. Occasionally, I would encounter a few evolved guards, but when I saw the mustache on Su Tong's shoulders and Yan Niang, I immediately chose to avoid them. In front of the gate, the huge statue has been carved. It can be seen that the majestic body is like a queen bee in a hive, but the face of the Queen Mother is actually a clear-looking woman's face. When he arrived with his mustache and Yan Niang, he saw Liang Hongren already standing there waiting. He held a child in his arms, holding a bottle in his hand and teasing the child from time to time. "You are finally here. I thought you would never come back." After seeing Su Tong, there was a sneer on his face, like a ferocious and vicious crocodile lurking in the mud. Liang Hong glanced at Yan Niang and Xiaohu with unkind eyes. Now that he has become the source of the virus, his overall personal temperament has undergone earth-shaking changes. Those cold eyes that were completely different from usual glanced at him, causing Su Tong to frown slightly, but his frown was not because of Liang Hong's change in attitude towards him. In fact, he knew exactly what Liang Hong was. A person who chooses to lie down or give up on himself when encountering some difficulties shows that his heart is not strong enough at all. If such a person is an ordinary person in reality, you can still get along with him. But if someone like him is allowed to gain power or strength, it will also make you understand what it means to be successful as a villain. "Where's that old guy?" He put down Yan Niang and mustache and stared at the solace of Liang Hong's feet. He saw that his boots were already covered in blood. The smell of fresh blood is not what an evolved person should have. "You're talking about those humans, kill them all." Liang Hong held the child in his arms and said with a disapproving look on his face. His relaxed tone seemed to be that he was throwing the garbage in the corner into the trash can. Hiss. Su Tong closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He realized that he had underestimated Liang Hong. "I thought you were just stupid, but I didn't expect you to be so stupid." In response to Su Tong's scolding, Liang Hong had no expression on his face and was still coaxing the baby in his hands with a smile, but the murderous intention towards Su Tong in his heart increased a lot. After the two looked at each other wordlessly, Liang Hong simply sat aside with his child in his arms. He didn't want to take action yet because the overall situation was still uncertain and he had to protect the safety of the child in his hands. He had already learned from the old guy's mouth the magic of this child. Once the secrets in this child's body can be deciphered, it will be of immeasurable significance to both humans and infected people. In other words, as long as you hold this trump card until the end, victory must belong to you. When you become the Queen Mother, you will be the ruler of this world, and he will become the biggest winner in this script world. He couldn't even imagine what kind of super grand prize would be waiting for him when he settled the rewards in the script world this time. As for Su Tong and the others, life and death will be decided by their own thoughts when the time comes, so even though they are increasingly dissatisfied with Su Tong's attitude at the moment, they still suppress the anger in their hearts and sit aside and wait. After placing Yan Niang and Xiaohu, Su Tong silently took out 2 bottles from the prop book, which contained the source viruses of Yan Niang and Xiaohu. Speaking of which, if the blood demon knew that there was such a shortcut, I don't know how he would feel in his heart. After all his purpose is to obtain the complete source virus to improve the core item card Dark Physique. If he had known that he only needed to obtain the blood of 2 source virus hosts to synthesize a complete source virus, and he would no longer be a vassal, I believe that the blood demon would have completed his task long ago. Maybe this isn't the best time. After all, there was Liang Hong standing there staring at him eagerly. But he must improve his strength again as soon as possible, because he may not have much time left. Listen carefully, the sound of fighting in the distance is getting smaller and smaller, which is not a good sign. The two kinds of blood flowed into the mouth, and there was no fishy smell as expected, but instead a hint of sweet fragrance. But soon, he realized the lynchy-like pain Liang Hong felt when he became the source of the virus. The veins under his skin were bulging and wriggling, first like earthworms rolling back and forth under his skin. Then drops of blood on his face were squeezed out from the pores, making his originally thin face look extremely ferocious. His pupils were as narrow as peas, and the whites of his eyes occupied the entire eye sockets. The expression on his face was full of confusion and sluggishness. He felt that his heart was beating hard in his chest, and the heartbeat was so loud that it seemed to resound throughout the whole world, and everything in front of him was bright red. You have been invaded by evil forces. Do you want to activate the heart of the abyss to devour it? There was a prompt from the prop book in his mind, but Su Tong did not choose to activate the heart of the abyss at this time. Although he had no experience, judging from the behavior of the blood demon. Since he had every chance to get rid of the shackles of becoming a vassal, he did not do so, either because of the convenience of action, or because only by becoming the source virus and activating the ability of the heart of the abyss can he maximize the benefits. Improve the ability of the dark body prop card. Watching Su Tong fall to the ground and curl up like a shrimp. A cruel smile appeared on Liang Hong's lips, but at this moment, Xiao Hu and Yan Niang calmly chose to hide Su Tong behind them. He stared at Liang Hong with alert eyes, fearing that this guy would take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. The reason why they did this was not because of the deep friendship between them. Don't forget that Su Tong had tricked them not long ago. But this guy has one advantage that no one else has, and that's credibility. At least no matter the outcome is good or bad, no matter who the other party is. He never wanted to monopolize all the benefits, and he promised that the other party's conditions would be fulfilled in full. Even though he knew that Liang Hong, an idiot, would definitely stand against him after becoming the source of the virus, he never treated him badly. At least the transaction between the two was fair and just. It seems that he still firmly adheres to this bottom line of being a human being. It is exactly like this. The more dangerous the moment, the more help from such people is often needed. After all, no one wants to be called not by a human but by a ghost when they fall into the water. Liang Hong couldn't understand this, but when he saw the two men staring at him warily, he finally hesitated for a moment and gave up the idea of killing Su Tong at this time. Time passed by minute by minute. Suddenly the sound of fighting outside completely disappeared. The whole world was eerily quiet, and both Yan Niang and Xiao Hu's hearts became tense. Even Liang Hong began to clench his fists nervously. But all the plans Su Tong had explained before flashed through his mind, and he still felt a little confident. The strength of number 8 is destined to cause a crazy counterattack, but to do this, he must be continuously injured. Only if he continues to be injured can the hosts of other source viruses see hope and participate in the siege. And he was able to dodge No 8's attack, hold the child on an invincible position, and enjoy the opportunity to make a profit by staying here. This plan was told to Liang Hong by Su Tong before, and now everything is going according to Su Tong's plan. The only thing that worries Liang Hong is how much fighting power this guy number 8 has left. After all, after following him for a while, he clearly knows how strong the terrifying desire to fight is. While watching and waiting nervously, suddenly a human head flew in and fell heavily to the ground. The head rolled and fell in front of everyone. There was a thick smell of blood in the air. Everyone took a closer look and finally saw clearly that the head on the ground was Wang Jiaming's head. Because of the strong vitality given by the source virus, although this guy only has one head left, his eyeballs are still trembling weakly. He stares at Mustache and Yan Niang, and his mouth trembles as if he is saying something, but he says without making a single sound, "I could only read 2 words in my mind following this guy's mouth shape. Run quickly." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 130. As he finished speaking, a stone flew out of the darkness and hit the guy's head without any bias. Everyone turned around in shock, only to see number 8 standing there without knowing it. An invisible majesty shocked the entire audience. Liang Hong, who was still full of arrogance and domineering just now, opened his mouth a few times in surprise. He just felt my heartbeat and breathing seemed to be suppressed by an invisible force. This feeling was just like the first time I saw number 8, that feeling of being dominated by terror came back. What's going on? Haven't you been seriously injured? As the outline in the darkness gradually became clearer, Mustache couldn't help but scream in horror. I saw number 8 in the shadows with sharp eyes and a calm but powerful demeanor. It seems that as long as he lives, he will endlessly burn the enemies in front of him to ashes. As he walked, even though he was missing an arm, every step he took caused black fire to burn on the ground. Like a belated king, his cold eyes exude the dominance of the world. Under such a huge aura, whether it was Yan Niang, Xiao Hu, or even Liang Hong himself, all felt uncontrollable fear welling up in their hearts. We were fishing, and he was fishing too. He was injured intentionally. Otherwise, how could Wang Jiaming and the others obediently seek death? On the ground, Su Tong endured the discomfort, struggled to sit up, and looked sideways at number 8. If he was using a conspiracy, then number 8 was using a conspiracy. From the time he chased Yan Niang, he might have already designed a way to seriously injure himself. But what he didn't expect was that he would intervene and turn the fake injury he had designed into a real injury. But even if he is really injured, the extent is within No 8's control. No 8's eyes were searching for Su Tong, but at this time, they were locked on Liang Hong. When he saw the child in Liang Hong's arms, the expression on No 8's face suddenly became even weirder. It seems that he didn't expect that Liang Hong not only betrayed him, but also appeared here with his child in his arms. Did he still want to compete with him for the position of Mother Queen? Number 8 was really angry and funny when he thought of this. He laughed because Liang Hong was not overestimating his own abilities. He was angry that an idiot like Liang Hong dared to betray him. If it was the blood demon, he would understand. After all, he was still as powerful as the blood demon. Approved. But Liang Hong is nothing. In the eyes of number 8, Liang Hong is just a tool. It's like you are arguing with your wife, and then you turn around and find that your Pekingese dares to yell at you. It seemed that he was a little frightened by No 8's gaze. Liang Hong swallowed hard and opened his mouth, but found that he didn't know what to say. However, number 8 was not interested in listening to his nonsense anymore. He glanced at Su Tong, whose face turned green and white. Give you a chance, kill them, and I will spare your life. He raised his forehead high. Even though there were many wounds on his body, it still could not change his proud and strong self-esteem. Killing Su Tong would not satisfy him. On the contrary, he would trample this smart human under his feet. Let him kneel and sing conquest to himself. Su Tong shook his head, stretched out his finger and pointed at Liang Hong and said, "Even your subordinates will betray you. You can only imagine how bad your character is." After Liang Hong stood aside with a dazed look on his face for a moment, he suddenly became anxious and blinked crazily at Su Tong, hinting to him not to involve him anymore. "Don't wink at me. You attacked the blood demon secretly, and after killing him, you lied about the military situation. Now you are the source of the virus, and you are standing here with your child in your arms. Isn't it just for this last step? Why do you want to become the Queen Mother? Don't you have any courage at all?" As soon as these words came out, Liang Hong became even more anxious. He couldn't leave or stay at this moment. He wished he could be invisible so that number 8 wouldn't notice him. However, Su Tong's every word was referring to him, which made Liang Hong feel guilty about being a traitor. He couldn't help but curse Su Tong, a traitor, and his eyes were shining brightly, as if he was thinking about how to escape unscathed. Number 8 had already attacked him for a simple reason. He had already sensed that Su Tong, a human being, was building up his strength to hold back for the last chance. He didn't care. As a strong man, he would never run away from any battle. But what he couldn't stand the most was that after both sides suffered losses, a jackal hiding in the grass jumped out to take advantage. With a claw, it was like a pool of black water roaring towards him. Wherever he passed, black fire kept igniting on the ground, and his prestige was unparalleled. At the critical moment, Liang Hong swayed and moved sideways to avoid No 8's hand. At the same time, he quickly jumped out and threw the baby aside. At this time, the baby has no restraint effect on number 8, and there is no need to take any care when making the move. Instead, it becomes a drag on him. In the face of life and death, he didn't even care about throwing away so many things. He didn't care whether the baby was dead or alive. Fortunately, Yan Niang took action in time. Regardless of her injuries, she pounced on the child and hugged the child into her arms the moment it landed. But Liang Hong obviously didn't have such good luck. He barely dodged No 8's attack. Just when he was about to counterattack, number 8 suddenly pulled his body back and held one hand above his head. Suddenly, a ball of black fire exploded in the palm of his hand, producing a fierce and terrifying suction force. At the same time, black flames erupted and hit Liang Hong. This was the ultimate killing technique that number 8 originally used to deal with Yan Niang. There was no room for dodge or block. Faced with the black fire that was blasting down in front of him, Liang Hong's expression suddenly changed. He knew that he couldn't hide, so he simply went forward and faced it, intending to fight to the death. Seeing him rushing up, number 8 finally showed a touch of relief in his eyes. At least this former follower could still retain some of his blood, otherwise he would be really disappointed. "I'll fight. This time I'll help you," he yelled and rushed towards number 8. Without any reservation, the abilities of various prop cards were activated by him without any reservation. Although Liang Hong has a cowardly character and a villainous personality, it does not mean that he is stupid. Otherwise, how could he have survived 5 script worlds, or even lived to this day? Naturally, he knew Su Tong's purpose of diverting trouble to the east, but this was also his own way of survival. Unfortunately, what Liang Hong may not have expected is that even if he became the source virus, his strength would never be comparable to number 8 or even other source virus hosts. Even with the blessing of the prop card's ability, it only made number 8 raise his eyebrows slightly, but the contempt in his eyes never changed. I saw number 8 slapping it with one hand, the black flames erupting from his palm twisting, like a stormy wave crashing on the shore, and hit Liang Hong's shoulder hard with his palm. Suddenly Liang Hong groaned, and his left shoulder immediately swelled, bursting the sleeves and collar. And you can see that the shoulder muscles quickly cracked and carbonized, and then spurted out a large amount of blood. The blood was in a jelly state and burned before it even hit the ground, showing a mixture of fiery red and light black. Liang Hong flew backwards and fell to the ground. His body was twitching uncontrollably. There was even a stench under his trousers. The pain caused by the black flames entering his body actually made him incontinent. But the blood flowing out of No 8's quarrel also clearly showed his serious injuries. After all, he was missing an arm. Liang Hong took the opportunity and tore a mass of flesh and blood from under his ribs, cutting off 1/3 of his lower abdomen. Beat them all into powder. Looking down at his wound, number 8 glanced sideways at Su Tong. "It's not healed yet. I've been waiting for you for a long time." The hoarse questioning voice revealed a little impatience, and the unruly figure stood upright. Even though he was seriously injured, he still had an arrogant aura of contempt for everything in the world. He really wanted to see what other methods this human being had. Su Tong raised his head, looked at Liang Hong who was lying on the ground vomiting blood, and nodded thoughtfully. Sure enough, the gap is still too big, right? Liang Hong was definitely not No 8's opponent, but facing the seriously injured number 8, he actually couldn't survive even one round. This shows that number 8 is powerful and worthy of his courage to use the toughest attitude to fight for the Queen Mother. Confidence. He stood up slowly. The bulging veins on his face had subsided, and even his pupils turned dark green. This is a characteristic of the source virus. But at this time, Su Tong actually activated Heart of the Abyss. Tip: are you sure you want to devour your source virus through the Heart of the Abyss? Doing so will make you lose the qualification to possess the source virus, and your body will develop source virus resistance, and you will no longer be able to obtain the source virus through vassalization. Yes. Without any hesitation, he decisively chose to devour the source virus. Blood Demon spent a lot of time and energy, and even became a vassal of number 8, all for the purpose of sourcing the virus. Of course Su Tong would not let the Blood Demon's final regret come to nothing. As the skill was activated, a ray of light flickered in his pupils, and soon he seemed to feel something waking up in his chest. After quickly taking something from himself, it disappeared without a trace. The source virus is successfully devoured, and the increase and reduction of your prop card Dark Body passive skill 1 Dark Body is increased by 10%. 40% dark damage reduction. The increase in passive skill 2 Night God's Caress is increased by 5%. 25% skill damage add 20% cooldown. As the source virus disappeared, Su Tong's eyes shone with light, his skin became paler, and the green pupils in his eyes disappeared, replaced by flashes of reddish. Judging from the prompts, the increase he obtained is not high, but if all the items are added together, the effect will be particularly terrifying. No wonder the Blood Demon spends so much energy to improve the dark physique. Sorry to keep you waiting. Su Tong stepped forward, slowly took out the big knife from the props book, and took a deep breath. When he opened his eyes again, their eyes flashed coldly, and they were suddenly unstoppable. It seemed that it was only at this moment that he really became serious. He knew that the drama he had planned was finally coming to an end. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 131. Still maintaining a proud posture, but with helplessness on his brows, number 8 stood as still as a mountain in front of him, with an expectant look in his eyes, as if he, who was alone in seeking defeat, finally found his opponent. He thought, we need to see what kind of methods this human being has. Su Tong suddenly stretched out one hand and raised it diagonally towards the sky. A dazzling light flashed past. Lightning flashed through the void, which could compete with the scorching sun. Strong electric current spurted out. Like a raptor trying to swallow up number 8. At the same time, the figure suddenly disappeared in front of everyone, and when he reappeared, he was already 10 meters in front of number 8. And number 8 responded extremely quickly. He did not choose to dodge the sharp edge. He still stepped forward to face Su Tong's broadsword. He slowly raised his one arm. Blue-black flames covered his body, like a demon, and he waved his hand. After letting the thunder around him dissipate, he waved his hand again, and saw the fire surge in front of his eyes, coming like a surging tide. However, an unexpected scene appeared. Faced with the surging hellfire in front of him, which was enough to burn everything, Su Tong's eyes flashed with enthusiasm and excitement. Ever since he witnessed number 8 killing Chen Hai in the Sky Garden, I have been waiting for this day for a long, long time. I saw green magic flames pouring out from his palms and quickly extending on the blade. The beating magic flames seemed to be full of life, beating in and out, which was the power of the devil. Seeing this scene, number 8 felt an outrageous feeling that he wanted to laugh wildly but also felt extremely ridiculous. This is like being a licking dog in front of young Master Wang, being a foodie in front of Zhu Beiji, and showing off table tennis with the uncle in the community. His own strange fire is known as the fire of hell. Although Su Tong's flame also looks very evil, in his eyes, this flame is just a blurry candle light. Playing tricks in front of Guangong? That was really annoying and funny at the same time. He was originally going to swoop over in an instant and use all his strength to crush this human being, as a way of paying tribute to his hard work. Just when the flames were about to engulf Su Tong softly recited 4 words at the corner of his mouth: "The devil is coming." As the voice fell, green fire suddenly ignited around him again. This time it was even different from before. The flames turned dark green and bluish, like a suit of armor covering his body, and even his entire face was covered by it. Wrapped in it. The power of the demonic flames has obviously increased again, giving people the feeling that their eyes are completely dark, and even the faint light will be swallowed up by the demonic flames. I saw the big knife in his hand held flat in front of him, rushing into the black fire in front of him and actually cutting a path open. Number 8 suddenly showed a look of surprise, but soon this look of surprise was covered by his stimulating fighting spirit. There was also indescribable fanaticism and excitement in his eyes. He laughed arrogantly, "This is interesting, but it's not enough." As he spoke, he opened his palms, and a big sword made of black flames appeared in his hands. This big sword seemed to be a sword made of tens of millions of tons of sea of fire and waves, and had been tempered countless times. The blade of the sword was swung towards Su Tong, and all the light in the surroundings seemed to be completely absorbed by the dark flames. There is no temptation, no holding back, only a full blow, which can be regarded as giving the greatest respect to the enemy in front of you. Either you die or I die. And coincidentally, Su Tong's heart was exactly like this. Facing the terrifying fire sword in front of him, Su Tong slowly raised the sword in his hand and silently turned out his last trump card, the Dark Lord. The moment he chose to activate this ability, a strong wind suddenly burst out under his feet. In an instant, a door full of blood opened quickly in his eyes, and countless blood poured out, almost swallowing his consciousness. What's this? Number 8 was horrified to find that his power was suppressed in an instant, and a dark gray flame struck from the blade in front of him. With the power to destroy all sentient beings, his heart trembled. This is hell. In a trance, Number 8 saw countless ghosts in cells before his eyes, whispering in his ears. Boom! Suddenly, with a collision, the black flame giant sword in No 8's hand, which had been condensed and compacted thousands of times, was actually cut into 2 halves. What made everyone even more unexpected was that at that moment, there was a flash of dark gray fire, and then it erupted from the sword that was swung upwards. It feels like a ferocious wolf biting its prey and sucking its blood. The churning flames formed a ring-shaped barrier around their bodies, boiling and surging. Like the mouth of a steel-making blast furnace, the flames shot straight into the sky, reaching a height of tens of meters, and even penetrated the dome of the lair. Finally, No 8's muffled groan of pain came from the sea of fire. Even he couldn't withstand the power of the gray demonic flames in front of him, which was like hell. His body was rushed out by the fire and hit hard on the statue of the Queen Mother behind him. Blood exploded from his chest, splashing onto the ground like fireworks at a wedding. Su Tong also dissipated the power of the Dark Lord in an instant, staring at Number 8 who jumped from the air. His steps were very light and slow, and he landed lightly on the ground, as if not even a particle of dust was stirred up. The body stood upright, and the hair-like knife mark on his chest could not be seen at all if you didn't look carefully. He looked at the big knife in Su Tong's hand that had melted into a metal rod, and added lightly, "If I am not injured, you are still no match for me. I can kill you all." If Number 8 seemed to be an out-of-control thunderstorm tornado before, now it is like a spring breeze, blowing in the face, very warm, standing there with a noble temperament inside and outside. Su Tong nodded non-committally and admitted, "Even if the injury is a little lighter, I will still lose." He rolled up his sleeves. In less than 5 seconds, his arm had become a bloody mess. Even with the dark physique and the powerful blessing he obtained through brain crystals, when he activated the Dark Lord, he could still feel his body burning rapidly like a lit match. Even though the maximum blessing time of the Dark Lord can theoretically be 2 minutes, as a result, I am afraid that I will be burned to ashes and become a sacrifice for this prop card. If it were another time, maybe we could become friends and sit together and have a drink. Number 8 said with a smile on his face and longing on his face. Farewell. If you don't agree, don't work together. Let's get on your way. If you continue, the Queen Mother will open the door. At that time, I will have no choice but to cut off your head with my own hands and give it to the Queen Mother as a night pot. Su Tong waved his hand and urged. You. No 8's face changed again when his worries were exposed. This time, a drop of blood flowed from the wound on his chest. The drop of blood seemed to turn on the switch of the faucet, and soon the blood rushed out. Immediately after, blood gushed out crazily from his nose and mouth, and his life was also fading away crazily as the blood gushed out. The body, as majestic as a mountain, finally lost its support and fell to the ground. The seemingly familiar scene, just like Su Tong singing the song Zhou Mei Chang, the ending is already destined. In the eyes of outsiders, Su Tong just got a bargain in the end, but no one knows how much he gave up for this bargain and this platform. He dug deeper step by step, and no one knew the risks he took. But at this point it seems that everything is worth it. Kill them well. Brother, kill them too. I will become the Mother Queen. Let's join forces and push them all the way. We will be the winners of this scenario. Liang Hong got up from the ground and looked at number 8 on the ground with a complicated expression. He immediately locked his eyes on the faces of Yan Niang and Xiao Hu. As long as Su Tong killed them, he would be the next confirmed empress. He doesn't need to worry about the future of the infected. He only needs to control the countless infected and evolved people outside, kill all other players, and forcefully end the scenario. He will be the biggest winner in the world of this scenario. As he spoke, he was still afraid that Su Tong would disagree, so he imitated his tone and said, "Brother, don't forget our identities, we are in this together." Good guy, this guy's ability to learn and sell now is all his fault, and Su Tong doesn't bother to pay attention to him. His goal has been achieved. No 8's head is his biggest trophy. As for the next thing, he has no interest in participating. That's all I can help you with, you can handle the rest yourself. Yan Niang was stunned for a moment, and saw Su Tong holding the child in his arms, and at the same time grabbing the mustache on the ground with one hand. "Excuse me, give me a ride. Are you leaving now?" Yan Niang did not expect that Su Tong would choose to leave at this time. Once she became the new Queen Mother, her previous promises would never be less, or even more. "If you don't leave, you won't be able to leave." Su Tong grinned. His special plot mission was inside the door behind him, but he had an intuition that once he completed this mission, his lineup would be completely determined. After finally getting rid of the root of the script, why should I go back to the original path? And I believe that Yan Niang must still have a trump card in her hand that can turn defeat into victory, otherwise she would not have been hiding herself from the beginning to the end, and it is even more likely that she was brought in to confuse other competitors. Since she holds the winning trump card, of course Su Tong will not stay any longer. "Don't go, you and I are in this together." Seeing Su Tong leaving, Liang Hong felt bad. He had promised to stay together until the end, but he didn't expect that he would be ruthlessly abandoned again in the end. This made him extremely angry. He. "Then just stay, trust me, you will have a good result." He looked back at Liang Hong, smiled meaningfully, pulled his mustache and turned around to leave. Seeing Su Tong leave, Liang Hong's pleas gradually turned into curses, but as soon as he cursed a few words, he suddenly found that Yan Niang stood up and slowly spit out a goose egg-sized lump from her mouth. The tumor slowly opened, and a big black insect crawled out from it. Liang Hong, who didn't understand what Yan Niang was going to do, suddenly felt a strong uneasiness in his heart. What do you want to do? Yan Niang slowly raised her head. Since you don't plan to leave, I can only give you a simple lesson. Liang Hong was startled, and in a daze he thought of what this guy said: when you give up your car to save your commander, do you still need to discuss it with your car? Suddenly he shivered all over, and finally understood what Su Tong meant when he showed a meaningful smile to him at the end. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 132. The cool breeze blows gently on the highway at night. Compared with the oven-like world during the day, the cool breeze at night is even more refreshing. An infected person was walking on the edge of the road. His whole body exuded a strong rancid smell, and the flesh and blood in many places had long been baked into dried meat. He limped along the road with difficulty. If you look closely, you can see that his left arm is missing. In the empty eye sockets, 2 pairs of eyeballs looked like dried salted fish eyes. After looking up and seeing the sign saying WL City on the road sign, he finally let out a hoarse scream. But at this moment, he suddenly turned his head, stared at the road ahead, and listened carefully. Buzz. The buzzing sound in the air was getting closer and closer. I don't know what he remembered. The infected person had a frightened figure on his face, limping and twisting his body and walking quickly to the side of the road. It wasn't until they reached the road that they felt relieved, but then a light suddenly jumped down from the slope above, accompanied by a violent roar. In front of my eyes, I was once again run over by a group of black tires. Boom! The black rubber wheel hit the ground hard, causing the anti-shock spring of the wheel to be compressed to the extreme. It left a friction mark on the ground and then quickly drove away. Only the broken body on the ground was left to squirm a few times, and finally his tragic life ended. As the cool breeze hit his face, Su Tong casually threw the head hanging on the handlebar into the grass beside him, and rode his bike towards the east. Because of his dark constitution, he actually felt extremely happy in the dark. Riding on the wheel, I couldn't help but want to open my hands, imagining that I was a bird flying freely in the sky. I had never felt so comfortable. He was able to kill number 8 with one blow. In addition to the power blessing of the Demon Power Awakening skill Dark Lord, the bonus of Dark Physique was also a huge factor. 25% Dark Skill damage bonus, plus 40% Dark damage reduction. He was able to escape from No 8's full blow without even activating the title skill. This shows how powerful the increase in strength is after possessing the core item card. However, he must seize the time now and find a more comfortable hiding spot to rest before dawn as soon as possible. The characteristics of the Dark Physique can make you as fast as the wind in the dark night, but it can also make you feel like you are stuck in a quagmire during the day. After all, everything has 2 sides. Under the basic principle of equal exchange, it is better for you to be a good person during the day. From late night to sunrise. The roar of motorcycles speeded along the high-speed lane, and occasionally some scattered infected people appeared, but these infected people did not pose any threat to him at all. Even some evolvers are often sent down to see the King of Hell by Su Tong with a thunderbolt. Until the car entered the city, Su Tong stepped towards the gate of a shopping mall. The sunlight behind him became more and more dazzling. Seeing a ray of sunlight gradually extending from the corner, he raised his brows slightly and put his fingers in the shadows. Down. You can see that his slender fingers look paler in the sun, giving him a sickly look. There is no scene of smoke emitting like those vampires in the movie, but you can feel the tingling sensation that makes your finger joints feel sore and itchy when the sun directly touches the skin. The blood demon always covered himself tightly. He estimated that the blood demon should have improved his dark physique more than once, otherwise there would be no need to do so. After thinking carefully for a moment, he felt that he could only improve his dark physique once more, and then he would not continue to improve it. This is not to say that the core item card Dark Constitution is not good enough. But based on the principle of equal exchange, the difference in strength between day and night will continue to widen, which is not a pleasant thing for me. Thinking of this, he glanced at the baby in his arms, wondering what the ranger's situation was now. Entering the mall, Su Tong went directly to the supermarket downstairs. I saw him summon the fat figure again. The self-destruction has no effect on Big Fatty, but for him, it means the disappearance of a huge amount of money. It costs 300 script points to summon the fat man again. And don't try to delay it. Once it exceeds 24 hours, the price will increase even higher. If Big Fatty was just a temporary worker before, he only consumed 4 bottles of Coke a day. Now Big Fat is a regular employee. Not only do I have to pay him 5 insurances and 1 fund, but every time he blows himself up, I have to pay him a large bonus. The gap is naturally, well, there is no more happiness for capitalists. But the only good thing is that Big Fat seems to be unable to taste the delicious snacks and cola anymore, and his huge belly has become a temporary container. If you encounter danger, you can usually escape by diving inside. There was no smell of life in the messy supermarket. I pulled up a trolley, put the baby on the baby seat, and started a day of $0 shopping. Naturally, he filled the basket with all kinds of milk powder, and of course diapers and wet wipes. Tana's child was randomly named Xiaobian by Su Tong. Normally, crying is common for babies who are not yet 1 month old, but the little one is very quiet. From time to time, dark green fluorescence flashes deep in the pupils of the black and white eyes. I casually opened a pack of pacifiers and stuffed them directly into the little guy's mouth, making him extremely happy. He left the little guy in the care of the fat man, and found a place to close his eyes and rest, and began to rest. I wanted to rest until late at night before continuing on my way. As a result, in the middle of the afternoon, Su Tong frowned and opened his eyelids from sleep. From the vibrations coming from above, one could clearly hear the sound of the tracks grinding against the marble tiles outside the mall. Is there anyone? He quickly stood up and found Big Fat and Little in the toy section. He recalled Big Fat first to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings caused by his exaggerated physique. Then he picked up the little one, held him in his arms again, and looked towards the escalator with squinted eyes. Not long after, I saw red lasers shining down on the escalator, followed by several figures walking down cautiously. Although there was no light in the supermarket, Su Tong relied on his dark vision to recognize the soldier leading him at a glance. He looked familiar. Thinking about it carefully, wasn't this the group of people who wanted to steal brain crystals from him? Although he was just a soldier, he had a photographic memory, and he immediately remembered it after thinking about it for a moment. I remember that this guy was just a member of a group of soldiers at the time, but now he seems to have become the leader of this team. The progress is not unpleasant. He looked at the baby in his arms, remembered his purpose, and coughed twice, ahem. Don't be so nervous. This supermarket is very clean. There are no infected people or evolved people. You have to move things as soon as possible. Moved. The sudden sound shocked Ma Long and others at first, but they quickly calmed down. Who is it? Everyone's eyes were focused on the direction of the sound source, but suddenly they heard the voice coming from behind them again. Hey, it seems that Professor Lee has found the antibody, otherwise you wouldn't be so bold and dare to appear here. Ma Long's expression changed, and he suddenly turned around. Just a palm pressed down on his shoulder, and the weak electric current immediately made half of his body numb, and he couldn't lift it up at all. When he looked behind him, he saw a thin face gradually becoming clearer in the darkness, with black and white eyes staring at his face. Ma Long was stunned for a moment, and suddenly his whole body was trembling. That domineering and terrifying sword flashed through his mind involuntarily. Surprised, it's you. As he spoke, Ma Long didn't know whether he should be happy or worried for a moment. He quickly asked the second captain to take over the task. He took Su Tong out of the supermarket and went to the lobby on the first floor. He randomly found a sofa area where cosmetics were used to sit down. Seeing that Su Tong didn't mean any harm, Ma Long gradually lowered his guard and carefully took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. Su Tong waved his hand and took out the cigar. After getting used to the smell of cigars, the cigarettes really didn't smell good anymore. Yes, it was a pity that Professor Lee saw you leave last time. We did find the antibody later, but the antibody was not that of the original child. The blood compatibility in him was actually the source of the virus. Ma Long said this matter with a serious expression. It turned out that just after they rushed to the survivor camp, the source virus had been released. At that time, the entire survivor base was instantly covered by the source virus. With an explosion, they also discovered Xiao Chenzi, who was at the center of the source virus release. He had just awakened and was still seriously lacking in strength. He was seriously injured and was later killed by Li Si with an arrow shot to the head. The source could be considered to have been eliminated. In addition, various drills had been designed in the camp, and the special forces were dispatched in time. Although the casualties were heavy, we still managed to hold on. And they found another surviving child on the bus, Zhang Qiang. What is deeply surprising is that Zhang Qiang's body actually has virus antibodies. This discovery made Professor Li and others ecstatic. After settling in the camp with the people, they quickly developed a new anti-sports vaccine with Zhang Qiang's blood. It was precisely because of the vigorous research and development of antibody vaccines that they dared to bring their team to the city to search for resources. After listening to Ma Long's words, he was deeply surprised and at the same time unhappy with the malicious play with space. He didn't believe that Ranger would choose to die with the source virus for a person in a scripted world. After all, for players, they were just passers-by in this world. Profit is the most fundamental pursuit. Even I will give up the special task decisively only after ensuring that I have gained enough. But there's no point thinking about it now. We have to continue to move forward tentatively and try to find as many resources as possible to go back. If we can't go with you, I give you these two things to ensure that you enter the camp smoothly. Ma Long has a very good impression of Su Tong, and the camp also needs such a strong person to join. I saw him reaching out and putting two things into his hands. Su Tong took a look and saw that these two items were actually a box of bullets and a syringe. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 133. Special Antibacterial Bullet, Plot Prop Item. There is a special viral bacteriostat hidden in the bullet, which will cause great harm to the infected or evolved people. Virus Vaccine V1, Plot Props and Items. Professor Lee devoted himself to research and developed an antiviral vaccine, which can immunize against viral infections after injection. Note, the vaccine is not 100% effective. It can only have an 80% probability of preventing you from being threatened by the virus and becoming an infected person, with unknown side effects. Looking at these two things, Su Tong nodded, put the things away, asked about the location of the camp, and got up to say goodbye to Ma Long in the dark. Along the way, he returned to the original county town again. In a department store in the city, he put on another set of clothes, a large windbreaker and black leather gloves. After completely covering himself inside and out with a black jazz hat, he looked in the mirror and found that it looked pretty good, a bit like William's look in Westworld. When I was about to leave, I accidentally discovered a musical instrument store. Oh, don't get me wrong, there wasn't even a suana in there, let alone a piano. It was just all kinds of radios and electronic speakers. Most of the customers targeted are square men and women. Su Tong rummaged around and found a Walkman, but the brand was from a different brand, Obviously not as good as the Sony one he had before. But it's better than nothing. Before leaving, he didn't forget to take advantage of the two super loudspeakers at the door. I don't know when it will come in handy. After changing into sun protective clothes, Su Tong continued on his way towards the human camp under the sun. The journey was day and night, and most of the roads had been cleared, so the speed was naturally extremely fast. But on the provincial highway, which was still 1 day away from the camp, Su Tong saw a burned-out pickup truck. He glanced at the license plate of the truck out of the corner of his eye, stopped the car slowly, took off his jazz hat, and observed 3 seconds of silence. Although he didn't know whether Aunt Wang survived, judging from the condition of Aunt Wang's broken leg, the probability of survival was extremely slim. In fact, if she had known this outcome earlier, Aunt Wang could have stayed in the supermarket until this point, and then followed the human search team back to the human survivor camp. But there is nothing in the world that could have been known earlier. I am not a god who can do calculations, and even the skill of making paper figures is still a beginner. He was on his way in a hurry. When we found the survivor's base, it was getting dark. This time, the car was stopped by the guards before it crossed the bridge. All of Su Tong's belongings were carefully inspected, and even the motorcycle was impounded. I saw a long queue forming outside the bridge. Many survivors rushed here after seeing the search teams out. Especially in the recent period, after the search team once again cleaned up the infected and evolved people that could be found around them, the safety of many survivors was undoubtedly guaranteed, and the number of people coming to the camp was also rising sharply. There is nothing much to say about queuing up for inspection. They also need to draw blood from Su Tong for a test to ensure that the blood will not change color when it comes into contact with the reagent, in order to be considered qualified. After passing the test, you need to be vaccinated, then go through the quarantine area and wait for a day to make sure there are no problems before entering the camp. Obviously this is also a new experience summed up after Xiaoqinzi's lesson last time. This child. A guard looked at the baby in Su Tong's arms. After a moment of silence, he stepped forward and said, "Sorry, the baby also needs routine inspection." Su Tong frowned. Although the little one was no different from a normal child, her body color was different from ordinary people. These soldiers might not understand her preciousness. If they really let them examine her, it would definitely cause a big problem. Seeing Su Tong's frowning expression, the guard raised his eyebrows, "Give the child to me, and we will give it to you after checking." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to pick up the little one, but Su Tong turned aside and avoided his hand and said, "Sorry, only Professor Li can examine this child. You can call Professor Li and say. If you don't check, get out." Before Su Tong Hua could finish speaking, a middle-aged man in black security uniform shouted angrily, pointing his finger at Su Tong, "Who knows if the thing in your arms is a monster? If you want to check it, check it. If you don't check it, check it. Get lost, we don't need you in our camp." The middle-aged man looked particularly excited. He pointed at the survivors who were queuing up behind him and cursed, "It's you who are doing the damn thing. It's not because your wife and I won't die. If you don't cooperate, get out. I don't welcome you." The middle-aged man became more and more excited as he spoke, and his face turned red, as if he was like a human hungry beast. When the other guards saw this, they actually understood him. Uncle Wang is a local. Because of the remoteness of the place, he escaped the attacks of the infected. Later, he tried his best to help in the camp. As a result, the Xiaoqinzi incident broke out last time, so that after he returned home, he watched his wife chew off his son's head, and he had to pick up an axe and chop his wife to death with his own hands. From then on, Uncle Wang's temperament changed drastically and he became like this. The more he spoke, the more excited he became, as if he was about to rush up and grab Su Tong's collar. Seeing this, Su Tong rolled his eyes at him, dodged Uncle Wang's hand, and guarded to the side, called Drli said that I was asked by his teacher to come here to find him. After that, he stopped queuing and walked to the distance to wait. Uncle Wang wanted to catch up, but he was stopped by other guards. After all, what they said was so conclusive. It seemed that this was really happening. Whether it was true or not, they still needed to confirm it. So he called the wired phone nearby. About 20 minutes later, Su Tong saw Li Zhengqing walking out with someone. "It's you." Naturally, the pharmacist and Li Ci also came out with Li Zhengqing. As the saying goes, enemies are extremely jealous when they meet. They had been tricked by Su Tong last time, and they still hated this guy. Now that they saw Su Tong swaggering in front of them, their faces suddenly turned ugly. "Hello." Sensing the unkind looks in their eyes, Su Tong greeted them with a familiar look. The mean expression made the pharmacist turn blue and white. Li Zhengqing hesitated for a moment when he saw this, but he still stepped forward, looked Su Tong up and down, and asked suspiciously, "Do you recognize my teacher? What's his name?" Last time, whether it was for show or to deliberately discuss the two pharmacists, Su Tong didn't leave a good impression. Now that he actually came to visit, it would inevitably make Li Zhengqing suspicious. "I don't know him. He never told me his name, but he said that you are his best student, so he asked me to give this child to you." "Child?" Li Zhengqing smiled coldly, already convinced that the boy in front of him was a liar again. However, when he saw the infant, the disdainful expression suddenly froze on his face. He carefully observed the child's complexion, and his expression was exactly the same as when the old man saw the child for the first time. Where did this child come from? After confirming the difference of this child, Li Zhengqing anxiously asked about the origin of this child. Unexpectedly, Su Tong just patted his belly, raised his head and looked at the sky and said, "I'm hungry." What else could Li Zhengqing and the others say at this time? They obediently welcomed Su Tong across the bridge as if they were inviting an uncle. When they walked through the security inspection area, they didn't forget to stick out their tongues at Uncle Wang, saying, "I won't check you." He came in the same way and almost sent Uncle Wang away on the spot. In fact, after the child was handed over to Li Zhengqing, he had already received a reminder about the completion of Side Task 4. Side Mission 4, searching for Li Zhengqing, has been completed. The prop card unlocked this time is the Evil Ring prop card. It is said to be the main prop card. After all, the attack skill of Enchanted Voice has been unlocked. If used well, it can also have good effects. But the problem is, the script score in my hand is already less than 3 digits. Among them, resurrecting Big Fatty is a huge part of the script. Now it is not an exaggeration to say that he is a beggar. Li Zhengqing brought Su Tong to the canteen, and specifically asked him to prepare delicious food. For this reason, the kitchen was stunned to make 4 dishes and 1 soup under limited conditions. Even though they were all vegetarian, he was tired of eating bread. Compared with instant noodles and snacks, it is no less than a full banquet. "Can you tell me first, my teacher is still alive like this?" Li Zhengqing asked in a low voice. Su Tong was chewing the steamed bun. He paused and shook his head. His. Even though he already knew the result, after getting the confirmation from Su Tong, Li Zhengqing's eyes still became uncontrollably moist. What is the origin of this child? Holding back his grief, he continued to ask about the little one's origins. Hearing this, Su Tong sighed, took out his cigar in a leisurely manner, and smoked it as if he was lost in memories. In a hoarse voice, he told the origin of the child. "The mother of this child is an evolutionist, but I want to keep my child." Of course he wouldn't stupidly tell Li Zhengqing and them about the lair. That would be asking for trouble. "I simply made up a story temporarily." As long as the birth history of the child was explained clearly, other information was not important at all. "So that's it?" When he learned that the child's mother was an infected person, Li Zhenking's expression suddenly became more eager. He didn't bother to entertain Su Tong, and hurriedly hugged the child and left. Only the pharmacist and Li Si were left sitting opposite Su Tong with evil eyes. Finally, the pharmacist spoke. He stared at Su Tong with evil eyes. "Hey, I let you run away last time, but this time you came to the door yourself. How do you settle our accounts?" Su Tong raised his eyebrows, took out a tissue and wiped the oil stains on the corners of his lips. He spit out a puff of green smoke on the pharmacist's face, and the corners of his mouth gradually cracked, settling the score. Are you worthy of it? Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 134. Say that again. Li Si was so angry that he raised his hand and threw the table in front of him away. When the people in the cafeteria saw this, they immediately ran away. Even the guards who were eating were stunned for a few seconds, and then quickly stood up and moved closer to Su Tong. But they obviously weren't here to help Su Tong. Instead, they all stared at him with dark faces and unkind eyes. This is not difficult to understand. After all, Yaoshi and Li Si are the heroes of the camp. When the virus broke out, they killed Xiao Chenzi with one arrow and saved a large number of survivors with their strong strength. In addition, after Li Zhengqing led the entire team to the camp, he developed a vaccine for the camp in a short period of time. In the eyes of everyone in the camp, they were heroes. If Su Tong's reputation in this camp is still a stranger, then the reputation of the two of them may have reached the level of respect. He is just an outsider, coming to give Professor Li a child. What does that mean? If they really take action, I'm afraid they, the guards, will be the first to rush up and fight Su Tong. Facing the people around who were watching eagerly, as well as Li Si and Yao Shi who were eager to attack him now, the smile on Su Tong's face became more and more crazier. He held the cigar in his mouth and read out word by word, "I say, you are not worthy." Everyone's eyes flashed, as if an invisible ripple passed by in the dark night, and Li Si's fist was aimed at Su Tong's chest. As the saying goes, those who are good at fighting must know their own shortcomings. Li Si knew very well that as a long-range archer, he had a shortcoming in close combat, so he worked hard to make up for it. This punch is accompanied by a layer of glimmering light, which is obviously equipped with the blessing of skills. Faced with the incoming fist, Su Tong did not dodge at all. A blinding cold lightning flashed on his right hand. At the same time, he bent his left elbow and pushed Li Si's fist away. This is the passive blessing brought by mixed martial arts, which allows people to have the ability of comprehensive fighting, which is naturally the best passive for themselves. With his backhand, the lightning exploded in front of Li Si's chest. A powerful electric arc suddenly paralyzed half of Li Si's body. He raised his leg and kicked Su Tong away from him. At the same time, there was a silver longbow in the other hand, which was obviously going to be serious. Seeing this, Su Tong was not polite and took out a meat-mincing axe from the prop book. "Stop!" Suddenly there was a loud roar, and everyone felt a chill passing over their heads. A tall and flamboyant figure in white flew towards the sky. He appeared between Su Tong and them in a gliding way. When he raised his hand, a bright light burst out from his palm, causing everyone to close their eyes subconsciously. Li Si closed his eyes subconsciously, but he didn't want to be hit by something unexpectedly on the face. Not only was it painful, but it also smelled of greasy food, and his handsome face was suddenly disfigured by the smash. Realizing that he had been tricked, Li Si subconsciously raised his bow and arrow to fight back. "I said stop." The angry voice came with majesty like thunder and lightning. The pharmacist closed his eyes, but he also felt the murderous aura on Li Si beside him. He was startled and quickly grabbed Li Si with one hand and cursed secretly, "Stop." Only then did Li Si put down his hand angrily, and when the bright light dissipated, everyone's eyes were filled with blurry shadows. Li Si's first glance was not at the person coming, but at Su Tong. I saw this guy holding a cigar in his mouth, wearing sunglasses and his hands behind his back, as if he was hiding something. If you look closely, isn't it a rice plate for serving food? Son of a bitch. There was evil fire in Li Si's eyes, but the pharmacist still held his arm tightly and shook his head to signal Li Si not to be impulsive. I saw the man standing on the dining table in front of me. His thin and slender figure was wearing a fitted white belted windbreaker. There was an iron rope hanging from his waist, and a thick metal book was strung on the other end of the iron rope. What's even more strange is that his bare feet were on the ground, and they were spotless. Su Tong took a glance and estimated that the foot was at least a size 48. Private fights are prohibited in the camp. I don't care how much hatred there is between you. As long as you are here, you must abide by the rules, even you two are no exception. The man's voice was like a bell, and his big eyes like copper bells stared at the pharmacist and Li Si. Anyone could tell that this was obviously a deliberate attack on them. After saying that, he turned around and looked at Su Tong. Every visitor is a guest after all, but a guest must behave like a guest. If you can't stand the constraints here, we can ask you to leave at any time. The man spoke very politely, but his tone was infinitely better than that of the pharmacist. Su Tong raised his brows slightly, took off the cigar with one hand, took off his hat with the other and placed it flat on his chest. He bowed forward slightly and nodded gracefully while accepting the instruction humbly. In my heart, I was curious about who this man was. Seeing that Su Tong was cooperating, the man's expression immediately improved a lot. He pointed to the door and said, "I heard that you are here. There is someone waiting for you outside." Su Tong was startled and looked outside the door, only to find that it was Zhang Qiang who was sticking out half of his head to look at him. Although he had learned from Ma Long that Zhang Qiang was fine, seeing this boy standing outside, Su Tong suddenly showed a bright smile, put down the blood-stained dinner plate, and said thank you to the man. Walked out without looking back, without even looking at the pharmacist and Li Si from the beginning to the end. The man glanced at the pharmacist and advised in a somewhat meaningful tone, "Both of you are heroes in the camp, so don't lose your place in this kind of thing." The pharmacist nodded repeatedly, "Hey, that's right, Brother Yang is right, what happened today is our fault." Seeing that the pharmacist had expressed his attitude, the man surnamed Yang jumped off the table with satisfaction and cast a cold glance at the surrounding guards. "What are you doing here? What are you doing to eat? You see a fight but you don't know how to stop it and you still join in the fun. Follow me to the supervision department, and each person will be punished once." Now the faces of several guards turned dark. One punishment means that their meal subsidy will be halved for the next 2 months, and the 2 cigarettes they originally received at the end of the month will be cancelled. But no one dared to question Yang Yanwang's words, so they could only follow and leave obediently. "Damn it! This guy surnamed Yang is clearly targeting us." Li Si couldn't help but cursed when he saw everyone was gone. The pharmacist was also helpless about this. He shook his shoulders, threw him a wet wipe, and asked him to wipe off the oil stains on his face. He then lifted the table that had been thrown away, put it back again, and then sat down. "Let's keep a low profile these days. We've been a little carried away during this period. Then just leave that bastard alone." Li Si was obviously still obsessed with Su Tong's hatred. Upon seeing this, the pharmacist directly traded him 50 script points, which calmed him down. "Let's go. It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. We have plenty of opportunities." The pharmacist lowered his head and looked at the direction Su Tong left with dark eyes like poisonous snakes. He already had a revenge plan in his heart. In the end, they all died. Under the sycamore tree, Su Tong's hand gently patted Zhang Qiang's head. This child had really grown up during this period of time. After realizing that something was wrong with him, he immediately ran over and called out the man named Yang. Come. After questioning, I found out that Zhang Qiang was actually keenly aware of his dissatisfaction with the pharmacist and Li Ci during this period in the camp. As for the specific reason, I'm afraid he still can't figure it out clearly with his little mind, but he can think of using this to save himself, which shows that Zhang Qiang has indeed grown a lot during this period. But the price of growth is also cruel. Who would have thought that a child like Zhang Qiang would be burdened with such great pressure? The playmate he grew up with finally killed him, and the ranger who protected him all the way died. He came to the camp alone. The people in the camp were very good to him, but the reason was because he was carrying the virus. Antibody. At least on the surface everyone was treating him well, but secretly there were many things to say. Some people even cursed him as a loser, or scolded him for not coming earlier. There was an endless list of things that he couldn't say or do on the surface, secretly, such as throwing dead mice on his bed, and secretly preparing special meals for him in the cafeteria. They looked the same as everyone else's, but in fact they were so unpalatable that he choked on them. Nose. The school is also in a dilemma. They thought about accepting Zhang Qiang into the school, but Zhang Qiang needs to cooperate with Li Zhengqing in researching new vaccines from time to time, and he cannot stay in the school often in a short period of time. As a result, he now has no support, no school, and no job. However, he has never been short of meal support camps. These grievances and pressures can only be expressed when seeing Su Tong. Why are you crying? Boys must learn to be brave. My father has taught me since I was a child that I must be strong and brave. A man must stand upright. Don't be beaten down by these pickled villains. Su Tong patted the little guy's head and encouraged him, not forgetting to give him some snacks from the prop book. After all, he is a child, and he becomes happy after being coaxed. Then he asked carefully about the situation in the camp, and he understood why the man named Yang was so rude to the pharmacist and Li Ci. Because they performed so well, a wave of individualistic worship began to set off in the camp. You must know that this is not a good thing for a highly centralized camp. This is why someone named Yang took advantage of the opportunity to suppress their limelight, overtly or covertly. Interesting. Su Tong thought about it secretly. Just when he was about to speak, he suddenly frowned and looked at the glass not far away. The shadows of the two people were reflected on it. However, what surprised him was that there was an unknown figure on his own shadow. When will a new countdown appear again? Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 135. The countdown appeared again, which surprised him. According to previous speculations, each countdown may mean that the infected person will make new improvements or changes. It had not appeared again for a long time since it last appeared, and now the countdown actually appeared again, which had to make him think of Yan Niang. Perhaps Yan Niang succeeded in inheriting the position of Queen Mother, which may have added new variables to the infected who have reached their end. The countdown this time is very short, only 5 hours. In 5 hours, even if players like them want to do something, they are probably beyond their reach. What's more, regardless of how fierce he yelled, it was mostly just a bluff. After all, he didn't have enough script points in his hand. This was what really made him anxious. Sure enough, script points are the lifeblood of players. He sighed, and after chatting with Zhang Qiang for a while, he suddenly raised his eyebrows, patted Zhang Qiang's shoulder and told him to go back and rest first, and then go to him when he was done with what he was doing. Zhang Qiang glanced at the woman standing in the corner furtively, nodded, but at the same time said quietly, "This woman is from the camp." Then he shouted, "I know, Uncle wants to play with me when he has time, I'm leaving first." After saying that, Zhang Qiang stood up and trotted away from Su Tong and the other's sight. As soon as Zhang Qiang left, the woman walked towards him on high heels. "Hello, I'm Song Nuanuan, We should have met before. When she said this, Su Tong immediately had the impression that she was the girl who finally rushed to the hall. He nodded expressionlessly and motioned for Song Nuanuan to continue. That's right, I've been in the camp, so I haven't had the chance to hunt the evolved ones outside, and I heard, the evolved ones seem to be very strong, so many of my tasks have not been completed yet. I would like to ask for your help. Help me. Song Nuanuan blushed and explained her purpose clearly. I have to say that the script world seems to take special care of newcomers, and it even takes care of Song Nuanuan to an enviable level. According to her, she was in this protected area when she woke up and had the identity of the camp leader's daughter. Compared with Su Tong and the others, Song Nuanuan was simply in the destiny circle and had enough resources. But she was so well protected that she had very few side missions, and even only 2 prop cards had been unlocked so far. So what is the purpose of you looking for me? Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Song Nuanuan's body. Brain crystal. I need a brain crystal for my main mission, and the higher the purity and the stronger the brain crystal, the better. But the problem is that it is difficult for me to get out of the camp. She spoke stumblingly, but finally made her purpose clear. Oh. Su Tong let out a light oh, his eyes narrowed in a straight line, and he examined Song Nuanuan for a long time. Song Nuanuan couldn't help but move his hand to his chest, and then he took out 2 heads from the prop book and pointed towards her. Song Nuanuan smiled and said, Beauty, do you want to open the blind box? Blind box. Song Nuanuan was startled, and looked at the 2 bloody heads in front of her. Her face turned pale, as if she thought of something terrible. She lightly covered her mouth and nose, and took a step back involuntarily. He pointed at the 2 heads with trembling fingers and said, Didn't you take out the brain crystals? This is the fun. He grinned and shook his head. Then do you want to bet on this long hair and a decent brain? Or do you want to bet on this wears that fat head with a fierce look on his face? Song Nuanuan took 2 steps back, as if she couldn't bear the smell of these 2 heads. How about it? These heads like mine are of good quality and have great backgrounds. They are all top quality. 500 script points are not expensive, right? Su Tong shook the head from number 8 in his hand and started selling it with enthusiasm. 500 script points. Song Nuanuan rolled her eyes, her head was like a rattle. I can't afford it, it's too expensive, and I don't even have 500 points for all my belongings. At most, 50. She squinted at the 2 heads, frowned, and offered the lowest price. Make a deal. Su Tong casually threw No 8's head into the prop book, and threw the other head at Song Nuanuan's feet. In fact, this head was just the head of an evolutionary person he killed casually on the way, and he didn't bother to take care of it because he was in a hurry. Since Song Nuanuan wanted to buy it, he would also sell it for 50 points of the script. Ah! As if she didn't expect Su Tong to sell it so easily, Song Nuanuan was stunned for a while, and her face turned strange. She once wondered if Su Tong was deceiving her, and whispered in a low voice, There are really brain crystals in this. Of course, I, Mr. Yu, have always been frank in doing things. To tell you the truth, in reality, my reputation in the street is resounding as being from a good family. Su Tong's face was not red and he was out of breath, and he patted his chest to reassure Song Nuanuan. Seeing what he said so confidently, Song Nuanuan hesitated for a moment, and then traded 50 points of the script to Su Tong, then pointed at the head and said, Can you cut it open for me? Certainly. Su Tong took out the axe from the prop book, but stretched out his other hand towards her. What? Su Tong raised his head and raised 2 fingers, 20 for the craftsmanship. You still need to pay for the craftsmanship. Song Nuanuan stared at Su Tong, feeling like she had encountered a profiteer. But looking at the head full of flies on the ground, Song Nuanuan could only stamp her foot and trade 20 script points to Su Tong. Puff. With the axe down, Su Tong took out the brain crystal with ease and wiped it casually a few times. That's right, a top quality brain crystal. Big girl, it's so expensive. Su Tong looked at the quality of the brain crystal, but he couldn't tell the reason. He threw it to Song Nuanuan. She didn't dare to pick it up with her hands, so she could only wrap it up with a wet wipe. Only then was it included in the prop book. Snort. Song Nuanuan hummed and put away the brain crystal. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly remembered something and turned around and said, "If you really lack script points, you can join the war room and participate in tonight's side mission. After completing it for the first time, you can get 100 script points, supplies, and you can also get some special material rewards. Then why don't you go?" Su Tong couldn't help asking after hearing this. Song Nuanuan raised her head proudly and pointed to the badge on her chest. "Civilian, I am not allowed to participate." "Oh, thank you very much." With a look of sudden realization on his face, Su Tong thanked Song Nuanuan. Just watching the girl leave, the smile on Su Tong's face gradually faded. He tilted his head to look at the reflection on the window glasses side, and groped his face a few times with his fingers. "I couldn't help but laugh at myself. Do I look very nice? How come a lion and a tiger want to take a bite of me?" As he said that, he walked in the direction of the war room that Song Nuanuan said. In any case, he really lacks script points now, so he might as well take a look at what the so-called side mission was. When I walked to the combat room and asked, I found out that the so-called side mission was not difficult. All I had to do was find enough supplies with the search team. To meet the mission completion standards, each person needs to pay about 800 kilograms of food supplies, or other precious material resources. For example, cigarettes, medicines, etc. Coincidentally, I don't lack any of these things, and I can even take out these resources at will. However, when he heard about the place he was going to this time, he was stunned for a moment, then looked at the map carefully. His eyes flashed with brilliance, and he decisively chose to join the search team. At the same time, the laboratory door on the other side was gently pushed open. This simple laboratory didn't even have a few decent scientific instruments. The most expensive and best thing was probably the centrifuge, which I found from a hospital in a neighboring city. It is unimaginable that the vaccines and antibacterial bullets produced by Nuxin were actually developed in such a laboratory. "Professor Lee, I found the brain crystal." Song Nuanuan's sweet voice came, with an expectant expression on her face, as if she was holding the graffiti she had worked so hard to complete and couldn't wait to show it to her parents, looking forward to receiving encouragement from them. In another time, maybe Li Zhengqing would be patient enough to entertain the little princess in the camp. It's just that at this moment, Li Zhengqing was not so elegant. With his eyes shining brightly, he carefully put the blood collected from the baby girl under the microscope and looked at it. His eyes were filled with excitement, as if he had discovered something extraordinary. "Amazing, this is simply the work of God." While he was talking to himself, his other hand kept writing some formulas in his notebook that ordinary people couldn't understand. It wasn't until his colleagues behind him called him that Li Zhengqing turned around. When he saw Song Nuanuan with an expectant look on his face, he was stunned for a moment. It took him a moment to remember what he had said. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. How about you keep the brain crystal and wait until I finish the problem at hand, then I can help you." Song Nuanuan felt strange when she heard this, but she couldn't say anything. She suddenly saw the baby girl in the incubator out of the corner of her eye and couldn't help but wonder, is this the child you brought today? Does she also have antibodies? No, she is more precious than Tenjiang, and may even change the evolutionary history of our species. Li Zhengqing kept shaking his head enthusiastically. When I walked to the incubator, I looked at it eagerly as if I had received a unique treasure. After speaking, Li Zhengqing ignored Song Nuanuan, who looked confused, turned around and started to work, as if even if the sky fell, it was not as important to him as his own research. Seeing that Li Zhengqing had no intention of paying any attention to her, Song Nuanuan had no choice but to retreat. After walking out of the laboratory, she saw a young man squatting on the ground holding an apple and chewing on it. After seeing him come out, she quickly stood up and said, "How is Sister Song? Mission accomplished." "No, that guy Li Zhengqing doesn't know why he's crazy. The mission has been put on hold for the time being." Song Nuanuan looked at the prompts from her prop book with a speechless expression. "Oh. What should we do next?" the young man stood up and asked. "Has the new guy gone to join the mission?" Song Nuanuan asked the young man in return. She saw the young man's fingers gently clasping his left eye, and the vision of his left eye immediately switched to an eagle. With the help of the eagle's vision, you can see Su Tong wandering into the search team's car. "We've already set off. It seems like this guy really lacks the script." After the young man finished speaking, he suddenly seemed to have discovered something again. "Huh?" Sister Song, the pharmacist, and Li Si followed him out quietly. It seems that they really plan to take the opportunity to get rid of this guy. They're quite impatient. Song Nuanuan changed her cute girlish look and hooked her fingers on the young man's chin. "Then you know what to do." Of course, the young man took a deep breath, as if he was smelling the fragrance on her hands, with a hint of madness in his eyes. "Of course, kill them all." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 136. It was getting dark, and the car was filled with the smell of various indescribable liquids. In addition to the salty smell of sweat, there was also the filthy smell emanating from the clothes and pants. The people on the search team were used to this. After all, even if the environment of the camp is not bad, it can be said that it is surrounded by mountains and rivers, and the water resources are very abundant, but not everyone has the time and energy to take a bath. Especially for people who often participate in search missions, being smelly is a natural protection. Some infected people have very sensitive noses. After being exposed to a rancid environment for a long time, they are extremely sensitive to the fragrant smell of humans. Therefore, having a bad smell on your body will provide you with a good layer of protection. Even self-comfort is a good choice. Boom, boom, boom. I don't know whether it's because the roads are too bad or because the cars have been shoddily modified. Many people were knocked drowsy and in poor health along the way. After smelling the sour smell in the car, they would often lie down on the car. There was vomiting all over the window. Fortunately, Su Tong did not sit in the car, but chose to sit on the roof of the car, sitting with the soldiers of the search team. For this, he naturally had to pay for the benefits of a pack of cigarettes. Of course there are pros and cons, because lying on the roof of the car caused him to be in the sun all day, and he felt bad. "Brother, do you still have cigarettes?" At this time, Su Tong heard someone asking next to him. He gently lifted the corner of his hat with his fingers and took a look. It was Captain Jia, the captain of this operation. He looks to be in his 30s, but his face is full of traces of vicissitudes of life. Some people would believe him if he was said to be in his 40s. Finished. Su Tong remembered that when he got in the car, he secretly stuffed a whole pack of cigarettes for him. "Hey." Captain Jia nodded sheepishly. "It's not in vain, this gun is for you to defend yourself," he said, taking out a pistol and handing it over quietly. Seeing the gun, Su Tong frowned slightly. This thing was a toy controlled by the camp. Captain Jia actually gave it to him so generously. He was surprised, and after thinking about it, he took the gun over. He casually took out a pack of soft Chinese medicine from his arms and handed it over, and asked quietly, "Did something happen?" Captain Jia just took the cigarette, opened his mouth, but swallowed the words when he reached his lips. Anyway, be careful in everything. As he spoke, he turned around, opened the cigarettes and gave them to his brothers to scatter. In fact, before the departure of this mission, they received an additional mission. The previous search team, which consisted of 50 people, suddenly lost news and could not be contacted. That's why they had to rush their day and night this time. On the one hand, they were searching for supplies, and on the other hand, they needed to find out the situation of the search team. This gave Captain Jia a sudden bad feeling, but the order had been issued and he had no choice but to go. Coming. A soldier bent down, lay on the roof of the car and knocked on the window several times to wake up the drowsy people in the car in time. Be careful during this search mission. Don't run into corners by yourself. Make sure that the three of you act together every time. Once you find that something is wrong, ignore the supplies and run away as soon as possible. Captain Jia repeatedly emphasized the rules of the search team to everyone in the car through the intercom. Some people carefully stuck their heads out and looked at the city with tall buildings in the distance, which looked like giant beasts dormant on the plains in the dark night. They couldn't help feeling a little panicked. It's already dark today. How about we take a rest and go in during the day, someone suggested. But this proposal was quickly rejected by Captain Jia. At another time, he might have considered it, but not now. They had to find the missing team as soon as possible. Moreover, this city has been cleaned up once. It is impossible for there to be large-scale infected people. The problem at night is not big. If there are really infected people or evolved ones, with their heavy firepower and special characteristics, seal fungus bullets, no matter what kind of evolver can escape death. As he said this, the car was gradually approaching the city. At this time, Su Tong suddenly noticed that there seemed to be some shops selling longevity materials on the street, and his heart moved. Captain, let me get off the car first. I will look for something here, and I will chase you when I find it. Captain Jia frowned when he heard this and was about to refuse, but Su Tong, a strong walker, had already jumped out of the car and disappeared into the shadows in 3 or 2 steps. Why? A soldier was about to shout when he saw this, but Captain Jia stopped him. Forget it, this man has extraordinary skills, let him go. After all, if you smoke someone else's cigarette, just treat it as a favor. The convoy moved on and soon disappeared into the night. After Su Tong got off the car, he quietly groped his way to the longevity material store. The store was dark and the door was locked, but he couldn't help himself. After kicking the door glass to pieces, he got in sideways. In the dark room, there are various paper figures made of birthday materials, especially on one side of the wall, there are neat paper figures standing in 2 rows. The pale faces were smeared with bright red putty, and they looked ahead with empty eyes and smiling expressions. This scene would make me feel horrified even if I entered it in broad daylight, let alone in the middle of the night. If I hadn't come from a paper-making background, I would probably feel distorted after watching it for a long time. Su Tong examined the quality of these paper figures and confirmed with his eyes that they were indeed garbage. At first glance, it looks like a Sanweo product wholesaled by a unified company. The thin layer of paper can make a hole just by spitting. Fortunately, although the paper figures had no use value at all, he still found what he needed. After rummaging around, he found that it was almost done outside, so he didn't plan to leave at all, and planned to take a rest here. Make some paper money and see if the money model your master gave you works well. Bang 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 bang. Around noon, there was a sudden burst of gunshots in the city. The sound was extremely fierce. It was obviously a big battle. He went to the window and knocked on it, but he didn't see the reason. He hesitated and continued to stay. It's here. On the one hand, I really don't have enough script points, so there is no need to waste them. On the other hand, the 100 Days War had a great impact on me, and I would feel uncomfortable if I was attacked. As the saying goes, the time, place and people are favorable. If you don't touch anything, it will be a waste of time if you go. It's better to stay here and wait. At this time, his ears moved, and he heard the sound of wheels coming from a distance, and he quickly hid his brows. Zhizzy. This time, by chance, I stopped outside the door, and there were quite a few people who heard the sound. Could it be reinforcements sent by people from the camp? But then I thought about it and felt something was wrong. If it was really a camp reinforcement, why did it stop here? In confusion, the people in the car actually started to search the surrounding shops. Soldiers rushed into each shop and carefully searched every corner. An infected person hiding in the cabinet was exposed and was beaten to pulp by bullets on the spot. Seeing these soldiers heading this way, Su Tong's eyes wandered around, and he suddenly seemed to remember something. He squinted at the pile of paper figures aside, his eyes lit up, and he stepped into the pile of paper figures. Bang! The door to the room was pushed open, and several soldiers walked in to take a look. When they discovered that this place was actually a longevity food shop, they immediately cursed at the bad luck. After a quick search, he turned around and left. But before he had taken 2 steps, he saw a soldier turning back. He seemed worried about the pair of paper figures in front of him. He raised the muzzle of his gun and fired. A large area of paper figures were beaten to pieces on the spot. After making sure there was no problem at all, he turned around and left. Little did they know that Su Tong was hiding in the fat belly at this moment, watching them silently. I don't know what these soldiers are doing, so I just have to find out for myself. About half an hour later, he saw a group of people rushing into the longevity food store. He took a closer look and couldn't help being surprised. I thought that the ones chasing me must be Yao Shi or Li Si. It turned out that instead of Li Si, it was another group of people, including Yang Yan Wang, who spoke up for him in the cafeteria yesterday. To use Zhang Hua's words, this Yang Yan Wang is a master of the camp inspection team and can be regarded as the last layer of protection for the camp. Not only can employees in all positions in the entire camp be supervised, but even the camp's troop guards can be mobilized at will. His appearance surprised me, but it was just an accident. But what happened next was far beyond his expectation. He really didn't expect that this person would actually appear here. A black cloak was slowly lowered, revealing a lazy dog-like hairstyle, as if it had been chewed by a dog. However, when the other party took off the mask on his face, an unexpected scene appeared. The person with this king of hell was actually a dead ranger. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 137. Why is the ranger still alive? The surprising picture made Su Tong confused. But the person standing in front of the ranger is indeed the ranger himself. With doubts, Su Tong read on silently, only to hear the ranger slowly open his mouth and say, "Brother Yang, you have to believe me, there must be something wrong with that little bitch. She deliberately transferred you out of the camp during this mission. There are hidden secrets. What's the use of telling me this? She's the commander's daughter? Do you want me to kill her? You're crazy." Yang Yan Wang looked ugly. He stepped forward and grabbed the collar of the ranger. He shouted angrily with red eyes, "Don't think that I don't know what you are planning. Don't talk to me about all the trivial matters. If you have this intention, just help me find the missing team and what happened just now. Tell me clearly and let me rush back as soon as possible." Across the fat belly, the two people's quarrel could be seen clearly, and Su Tong couldn't help but feel suspicious. This is definitely not a ranger. Even though I didn't get along with the ranger for a long time, I got to know this kid thoroughly. Therefore, I am sure that the ranger in front of me is definitely not the one I know. The two did not continue to argue. They only heard the ranger say, the gunfire just now was that the second search team was attacked, but they were repelled. After finishing speaking, the ranger was silent for a while, and then said, "I looked on the roof of the mobile building, but I couldn't find the first search team at all. Besides." "What else?" Yang Yanwang raised his head with an unhappy expression. "I don't know why, but the center of the city always feels misty. Don't go there unless necessary." Snort. Yang Yanwang snorted coldly, turned around and left. The ranger stood there motionless, until the car outside started to start, and King Yang Yan had taken the people away. The ranger still stood there stupidly, as if he was a dead person. Strangeness. Could someone be controlling the ranger's body? But he remembered that Zhang Qiang said that the ranger died in the explosion, and when his body was found, there was almost no human form anymore, right? With doubts, he planned to wait here to see what the ranger would do next. As a result, after waiting for a while, slight footsteps began to be heard outside. Su Tong took a look and said, "Hey, an acquaintance is here. Aren't these the pharmacist and Li Si?" After the two of them walked into the longevity shop, they immediately saw the ranger standing there, but judging from their expressions, they didn't seem to be surprised at all by the ranger's appearance. "Tell me what you want from us, brothers." The pharmacist was sitting on the bench with a lazy look on his face. It seemed that he had spent a lot of energy in the rush. Li Si looked around the longevity food shop casually. In reality, Li Si grew up abroad and had never been exposed to places like longevity food stores. He occasionally saw these things at other people's funerals, but had no chance to understand them in depth. "I advise you not to mess around recently. I have a hunch that the main mission is about to start, and it may even be a camp mission. Wouldn't it be nice to have one more ally on our side? Why do we want to treat people on our side at this time? Start." The ranger's face was stiff, and even his voice sounded hoarse and harsh. He looked at the pharmacist with empty eyes and offered good words. "You put it lightly. What can I do if I don't like it? The worst case scenario is that the mission fails. I have life-saving tools in my hand. The two of us will just go back. Whoever doesn't make it easy for me, I won't make anyone feel comfortable." The pharmacist looked indifferent, as if Su Tong owed them 5 million and hadn't paid back. He. There was a bit of a sneer on the ranger's stiff face. "I almost believed it. Did that little girl Song Nuanuan tell you that he has the source of the virus on his hand? Otherwise you would be able to follow him out with a shy face." Su Tong, who was hiding aside and enjoying the delicious melon, was stunned when he heard this. "After eating the melon for a long time, I didn't expect that it would actually end up on me. I took out No 8's head just to test Song Nuanuan, but this bitch backhandedly gave the news to the pharmacist and the others. Interesting." Su Tong touched his chin, becoming more interested in Song Nuanuan. He had never believed her from the first word she said. What's more, no matter how young she pretended to be, she couldn't hide the smell of green tea all over her body. He even doubted whether Song Nuanuan was the first person to complete the identity task. After all, the identity of the camp leader's daughter simply brought her own aura of resources, and her advantage was astonishingly huge, as exaggerated as if the blood demon directly became the host of the source virus. Now he is playing the trick of driving away tigers and devouring wolves. Su Tong even wonders if there will be a mantis stalking the cicada and an oriole behind. The pharmacist's face darkened as he was troubled. They had already had issues with Su Tong, so of course they couldn't sit still after learning that he had another source of the virus. You must know that the source virus in Xiao Chenzi's mind brought them great benefits. In addition to the script points reward, Li Zhengqing also prepared 2 physical strengthening potions for them. These 2 potions were originally semi-finished products that the camp searched in the army. Li Zhengqing personally perfected these potions. One potion can increase the overall physical fitness by 15%. It is simply a luxurious reward, No wonder the two of them are so excited. Moreover, Song Nuanuan said with certainty that this guy probably doesn't have many script points left. He is simply a big fat sheep, and anyone who lets him go is a fool. Being touched, the pharmacist's face became a little uneasy. What you say is better than what you sing, Gaozhou. I have heard of your name, Corpse Exorcist, right? It is said that you can resurrect the player's corpse. Not only can you control the corpse, but also you can get 10% of the bonus script points from the players, and you talk to us about benevolence and justice? Don't you think it's ridiculous? Believe it or not, it's a shame if you don't believe it, but people like you will only die sooner. Ranger, no, should be called Gaozhou. After he saw that the pharmacist could not be moved, he simply did not intend to continue talking. He controlled Ranger's body and walked out of the longevity shop. When he reached the door of the store, his steps suddenly stopped. He turned around and looked at the pharmacist, and reminded him coldly, "The mantis stalks the cicada and the oriole behind you. If you treat other people as prey, maybe others are also pointing their guns at you." The pharmacist's face changed slightly. He raised his eyelids, and cupped his hands towards the ranger. "Thank you." Only after the figure of the ranger disappeared outside the door, Li Si stepped forward. "What he said may not be false. I also think Song Nuanuan's words are unreliable. Just in case. It is precisely because we are unreliable that we should rely more on ourselves." Medicine Master interrupted Li Si. It was precisely because he knew the cruelty of the script world that he made this choice. As time goes by, everyone's resources become scarcer, and now the effect of ordinary brain crystals on improving them is getting smaller and smaller, almost to a minimum. Moreover, after consuming the brain crystals, it seems to have begun to bring about some negative effects. For example, recently, the pharmacist has noticed that he has begun to have auditory hallucinations in his ears. "I always feel like someone is whispering in my ear." Li Si is no exception. If you lift his clothes, you can see a strange layer of horny object growing under his skin, and it is still expanding. If they are like this, the Special Forces members will have even more problems. The camp has even begun to ban members of the Special Forces from eating brain crystals at will. If he couldn't gain enough advantage as soon as possible, he was worried that they would all become cannon fodder before long. So they must get another source virus in exchange for better and stronger resources to improve themselves. Brother, you have to take risks to do big things. If you don't want to take any risks, how can you achieve anything? The pharmacist said seriously. Li Si thought for a while, and it was the same. The two of them sat down and rested for a while, then got up and left one after another. No one noticed that among the piles of paper figures, the big fat man's big and honest face was looking right at him. He stared at the backs of the two people in silence. After listening to the two chattering a lot, Su Tong realized that the original source of the virus also had the effect of exchanging items. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought, wouldn't it be great if he returned to the camp and redeemed the source virus? But then I thought about it and felt that this was too cheap for this group of people. Since you don't intend to make things easier for me, I won't make you feel comfortable either. Want to kill me? Hey, wait for bad luck. Thinking of this, he wanted to urge the fat man to leave here, but just as he was about to move, the footsteps outside the door came again. I saw that the ranger who had just left actually turned back, walked into the room with a dull face, and didn't forget to close the door. Brother, you heard it too. Your current situation is not good. Do you want to join forces with me? The ranger said to the paper figures. Su Tong was shocked, but he did not speak, quietly waiting for the other party to continue speaking. Don't be surprised. We are related to each other. We are both from the 8 sections. I am a corpse remover and you are an origami maker. Speaking of which, we are both players. Isn't it fate that we can bump into each other? Gao Zhou said through the mouth of the ranger. As if he was afraid that Su Tong wouldn't believe it, he first raised his arm, his left hand flat on his chest, clenched it into a fist, raised his thumb, and placed his right hand flat under his left hand. Since he has been following Mr. Song, he has learned many of the gestures of the 8 sections. When he sees this, he immediately knows that the other party is really a disciple of the 8 sections, no matter whether this ability comes from the script world or he has someone in reality teach him, but showing this gesture at least shows that he has the same 8 inheritance as himself. Seeing this, he stopped hiding, crawled out from the big fat mouth, and cupped his hands towards the ranger in front of him, but his cupping gesture was different from the ranger's. It's much simpler than his gesture, just put your hands on your chest to make a bow. However, the seemingly simple gestures actually hide many doorways. The lower left and upper right are mourning arches, the upper right and lower left are happy arches, and Su Tong's left hand, lower right hand, and upper right hand are also used to express his identity. Upon seeing this, the ranger let out a hoarse laugh. He is really a brother of the 8 gates. Come with me. Let's meet and talk. As he spoke, the ranger pointed towards Su Tong to the roof of the mobile building outside the door. When Su Tong walked to the door and looked up, he saw a mirror on the roof flashing towards him a few times, squinting. Looking carefully, there was actually a person standing there on the top of the building, waiting for him.